Hi everyone and welcome back to CodeNodes. Till now we were covering the basics of C++ and now it is time to see the conditional statements in C++. One step ahead and we are starting the advanced topics of C++. So conditional statements in C++ are the statements that allow your program to make decisions based on certain conditions. Like if condition is true, do something, and if the condition is not true, do the other thing. So these statements are if statement, if else statement, else if statement. This statement is also called else if ladder and nested if and switch statement, and lastly ternary operator, which is part of the operator which we skipped that time and we will do it at the last of the conditional statements. So this is the general syntax of the if statement. For this whole video we are supposing an example of the admission criteria of any university. So for example, we are taking a condition where your marks or percentage is greater than 50, then you are eligible for admission. So if this condition is true, then this block of the code will be executed. This is the general syntax where if and inside this braces the condition goes, and if this condition is true, then inside this curly braces the part of the code which is inside this curly braces will be executed. Let me show you by running this example. So we will firstly take integer type variable marks, and for now we will be taking this marks from the user. Please enter your marks and scene marks. Now if marks are greater than is equal to 50, then we are going to print a message that cout you are eligible for admission, and end the line here. If I save it and now if I compile and run this, and if I give my marks as 68%, so it has printed that you are eligible for admission. Now let's give another example, and there is I am going to give it a number below 50 like 45. So it has not printed anything, because if this condition is met, then this block of code will be executed. If this condition is not met, then after that we have not write any part of the code, so the program ends here. So we can handle that part of the code here, that if the marks is less than 50, then you are not eligible for admission. So now if I compile and run this, and if I give marks less than 50, which is 45 in my case, so it has printed you are not eligible for admission. So this time this condition fails, so it skips this block of code, then it checks this condition, and this condition is true as 45 is less than 50, so it executes this block of the code. Now as you can see, we are using if and if. There is another convention we use to handle this situation in the case of the condition is false, and that is if else. So if your marks are greater than 50, or then this part of the code will be executed, else this part of the code will be executed, where we do not need to explicitly write if marks is less than 50. So I'm just gonna remove this part and put else here. So this is the alternative for that if, and we were using if for every condition, so we just use else instead of that. Now if I compile and run this, and if I provided a value which is less than 50, I'm going to give it 39. So it has printed you are not eligible for admission. So this is the condition where if the condition is true, we are printing this, and if the condition is not meeting, then the part of the code inside this block succeeding this else will be executed. And the thirdly, that else if. What happen if we have multiple conditions which are greater than 2? Like in the previous example, we have seen that if your marks is greater than 50, you are good to go for admission, else you are not eligible for admission. But if your marks are greater than 50 and we are seeing multiple conditions, so in this example, you can see that if marks is greater than 70, you are eligible for program X like The university has a merit system, and based on the percentage of your previous program, they are offering you different kind of program. So this is the general syntax of else if, where if one condition is met, then this part of the code will be executed. Else if there is another condition, if this condition is true, then this part of the code, and so on. So this is called else if ladder, because it else if this kind of, it makes kind of a ladder in structure. So let me show you it by writing an example. So for that, let me create another file, and let me just copy this code over here, copy and paste it here, and save it as if else. Now we are going to put here that if your marks is greater than 70%, then you are eligible for admission in program X. And what if your marks are greater than 60 and less than 70? So if your marks are greater than 60, then what happens? So you are eligible for admission in program. You are not eligible for admission in program X, but you are eligible for admission in the program Y. What if your marks is greater than 50? Then what happens? So if your marks is greater than 50, then you are eligible for admission in program Z, or eligible for admission in the university in any lowest program. And lastly, we are going to print that else where the marks is less than 50. That condition will be handling, where we are going to just print a message that cout, sorry, you are not eligible for admission. This is the else if example. Here we are checking multiple conditions. If your marks is greater than 50, then you are certainly able to take admission in the program. And here is a merit system. For example, if your marks is greater than 70, then you are going to go for program X, and then greater than 60 for program Y, and for marks is greater than 50, then program Z. And obviously for less than 50, we are going to print that you are not eligible for admission. So if I compile and run this, and if I give it a value of 89, so it has printed you are eligible for admission in program X, as it falls in this condition. So it directly executes this. So let me test a value which is in between 60 and 70. So I'm going to give 67. So it has printed that you are eligible for admission in program Y, because the 67 is greater than 60. And lastly, we are going to give a value of in between 50 and 60. I'm going to give it 54. Then it has printed that you are eligible for admission in program Z, because it checks this condition. Obviously this is false, then it goes to this condition where it is also less than 60, so it is also false. And lastly, when it checks this condition, it is true, so it has printed this line. What if I give it a value which is less than 50? For example, I'm going to give it a 45. So it is printed that so you are not eligible for admission. So this is the examples of the else if, where we are seeing multiple conditions. Lastly, we are going to see that nested if. Nested if is that we are using if condition inside this if condition, and we are using this nesting structure inside if, and this is also inside if, like we are using condition within condition. So in this example, we have seen that if your marks are greater than 50, then obviously you are eligible for admission. And then if you are a sports person, so you will be awarded with 20% of the scholarship. And then if you have marks greater than 80 and you are a sports person, and if you are non-local, like you are not from the city where the university is, then you can avail the hostel facility. So let's see this example. Let me create a new file and just copy this code over there. save it as a nested. For now, let me just clear this part of the code, and we will take one more variable that is boolean type, because you can either be a local or non-local. So is non-local, and we will be taking this from the user too. So please just ask the user that are you local, and here we are going to give the variable are you local. So let's put a question mark over here, and here we are going to give the is non-local. Let's put it here, non-local, are you non-local. So now we are going to check the condition that if marks is greater than is equal to 50. If the user has a marks greater than 50, then obviously he is eligible for admission. End line here. And what if user marks is greater than 80? So we are going to put one over here that if marks is greater than 50, he is able to admission. And if his marks is greater than is equal to 80 in last program, so he will be awarded with 20% of the scholarship in academic fees. So eligible for scholarship. And now we are going to see that if the user is non-local, like he is not from the city where the university is, so we are going to see is non-local, and if non-local is true, so we are going to print that eligible for hostel. Let's dry run it. So if a user has a marks greater than 50, and for example his marks is 60, then this condition will be executed and the program will see if this condition is meeting or not. If not, then this part of the code will be skipped and the program directly prints this line. Whether if he is local or not, this condition will not be checked. Now let's compile and run this and test it with different values. So if I compile and run this and give it a value of 45 and non-local as true, it has not printed anything because at the first condition, which is false because 45 is less than 50, so it has written false here. So these both conditions will not even be checked if this condition is not true. Now let's test it with another value. For example, this time I give it a value of 60 and non-local is a true. So it has printed eligible for admission. Since the marks is less than 80, so this condition is false. So even this condition is true or not, this will not be checked. So only this condition is true. So it has printed that eligible for admission. And thirdly, we are going to give it a value of marks as a 90, which is greater than 80, and are you non-local, so we are going to give it a false 0. In this case, it should print the first two conditions. Now as you can see, the first condition says marks is greater than 50, correct, 90 is greater than 50, so this is printed. Second condition is also true, so it has printed this too. And the third condition is false because user has entered 0, which is false. Non-local is false, so this condition doesn't meet, so this will not be executed, and only these two lines have been printed in this screen. Now lastly, we are going to give it a value of 90 as a marks and non-local as a true. Now as you can see, it has printed all of these three lines because all of these conditions are met. So this is the example of the nested if in C++, and now we have covered if, else, else if and nested if in C++, and we will be covering switch statement and ternary operator in our upcoming video. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up and do not forget to share the video and subscribe to CodeNodes. Thank you for watching.